How serious is God about sexual immorality? Were sexual perversions one reason why the previous inhabitants lost their land? Did they also practice child sacrifice? Are we also to avoid sexual sins? Let's look at Leviticus 18. Whose law was Israel to follow? That of surrounding nations or God? Yahweh said to Moses, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, I'm Yahweh your God. You shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt where you lived. You shall not do as they do in the land of Canaan where I'm bringing you. You shall not follow their statutes. You shall do my ordinances. You shall keep my statutes and walk in them. I'm Yahweh your God. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my ordinances, which if a man does, he shall live in them. I'm Yahweh." Is sexual intercourse allowed with a close relative? No one is allowed to approach any blood relative for sexual contact. I'm the Lord. You must not uncover your father's nakedness, which is your mother's nakedness. She's your mother. You must not have sexual contact with her. You must not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It's your father's nakedness. You must not have sexual contact with your sister, regardless of whether she's your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, whether born into the same household as you or outside it. What are some other specific examples of a close relative with whom sex is forbidden? Don't disgrace yourself by having sex with your granddaughter or half-sister or a sister of your father or mother. Don't disgrace your uncle by having sex with his wife. Don't have sex with your daughter-in-law or sister-in-law. And don't have sex with the daughter or granddaughter of any woman that you've earlier had sex with. You'll be having sex with her closest relatives, and that would make you unclean. As long as your wife is alive, don't cause trouble for her by taking one of her sisters as a second wife. What are some other examples of sexual misconduct according to God's law? Was child sacrifice included in this list? You shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness while she's in her menstrual uncleanness. And you shall not lie sexually with your neighbor's wife, and so make yourself unclean with her. You shall not give any of your children to offer them to Moloch, and so profane the name of your God. I'm the Lord. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It's an abomination. And you shall not lie with any animal, and so make yourself unclean with it. Neither shall any woman give herself to an animal to lie with it. It's perversion. Were these sexual malpractices one reason why God punished those nations by taking away the right to their land? Don't defile yourself by any of these practices, for the nations I'm driving out before you have defiled themselves by all these things. The land has become defiled, so I'm punishing it for its sins, and the land will vomit out its inhabitants. But you are to keep my statutes and ordinances. You must not commit any of these detestable things, not the native or the foreigner who lives among you. Would Israel likewise lose their land if they committed any of these sexual perversions? Because the inhabitants of the land did all of these detestable things, and by doing so defiled the land before you, so you're not to let the land vomit you up because of your uncleanness, as it's vomiting the nations that were here before you. Anyone who does any of these detestable things, whoever the person may be, is to be eliminated from contact with his people. Therefore, keep my instructions so that you won't practice these detestable things that have been done before you, and so that you won't be defiled in them. I'm the Lord. Is changing the qualifications for elders without God's authority from the husband of one wife to celibacy one possible reason for the gross sexual misconduct in the Roman Church. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication or sexual immorality, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. What are the 4 things that the early church commanded Gentiles to obey? But concerning the Gentiles who have believed, we wrote, having decided that they should keep from meat sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what's strangled, and from sexual immorality. Was a man who had sex with his father's wife removed from church? It's actually reported that there's sexual immorality among you, and sexual immorality of such a kind as doesn't exist even among the Gentiles, namely that someone has his father's wife. You've become arrogant and have not mourned instead, so that the one who'd done this deed would be removed from your midst. Did this have a happy ending? After a time out, was the man able to be restored to the church? The punishment inflicted on him by the majority is sufficient. Now instead you ought to forgive and comfort him, so that he'll not be overwhelmed by excessive sorrow. I urge you therefore to reaffirm your love for him. How serious is God about sexual immorality? Were sexual perversions one reason why the previous inhabitants lost their land? Did they also practice child sacrifice? Are we also to avoid sexual sins? You decide.